think we actually just hit the noon point. So I'm Farmer D. It's really an honor to be here, sharing the stage with superstar like Martha Stewart. What a treat. I really want to thank the Iowa Farm Bureau for sponsoring this and for People's Company for inviting me to come out today. You know, lunch is my favorite time to give a talk. You know, not so much because everybody's so distracted eating and talking to each other, but because it's really around the table that we celebrate food and the soil and the seeds and the farmers that brought it to our table. And we gather around and we inspire each other and we connect with each other and we nourish ourselves and each other around food and around the table. And so I'm really, and my journey that I want to share with you today actually started at lunch in many ways. I was a freshman in college, the University of Wisconsin-Madison, about 25 years ago. And I was sitting in a little cafe called the Radical Rye on State Street, eating a turkey sandwich. And for some reason on that day, I don't know, I might have been stoned, you know, who knows, but I was staring at the sandwich, and it like looked back at me, and it really forced me to ask myself this question, like, where did you come from? Who grew you, and how? And how come I eat 3 meals a day, every day, and I have never grown anything I eat, and I don't even know anybody that's grown anything that I eat? And in that moment, over the simple turkey sandwich at lunch, I decided I wanted to learn how to grow a turkey sandwich from scratch. Now, I'm a suburban boy from Atlanta. I'd never been on a farm, but I knew that this was something that I was supposed to explore as a curiosity. And it was really sweet talking to Martha over lunch, and what she's going to share is she's actually growing a turkey sandwich from scratch on her farm. So thanks, Martha, for being an inspiration there. But you know, what this curiosity took me on a really fun journey. And I transferred into the ag school that year, summer of my freshman year. I found an internship on an organic farm in Watertown, Wisconsin, the Prairie Dock Farm. And it was there that I really discovered that turkey sandwiches are not all created equal, right? The way that the average meal, that turkey sandwich travels about 1,500 miles. And I always like to find out when I'm having lunch in a place like this where the food's coming from. So I do want to, congratulate that all the pork this afternoon is Iowa-grown pork, which is awesome. A little tough to have veggies in Iowa this time of year, right? So this journey in studying farming, getting my hands in the soil, I became so passionate about it, and I was shocked at how few people actually knew about where their food came from or even cared. That's changed a lot in the last 20 years. Now people really do care about where their food comes from, but back then they didn't. And I decided I wanted to share this passion that I had found and this inspiration around just a simple lunch with other people to connect them more to their food and where it comes from and who grows it and how we're all farming by proxy, right? The decisions we make every day of what we eat has a huge effect on our land, our farmers. And so this turkey sandwich represented our whole food system in many ways, the way that our food is grown, the way our grains are grown, the way our animals are raised, the way dairy happens. It really, and unfortunately in many cases, in addition to the distance the food travels, a lot of the things that go into raising those animals and those crops are not necessarily the things that we want to be supporting and putting in our body, right? Not necessarily the best for the environment or human health. And so, I started to explore and discover that there are ways of farming to help improve the soil, support healthy animals, support healthy people, and ultimately healthy communities. So, this turkey sandwich actually led me to ultimately, after several internships, I decided, college wasn't necessarily the best place to study farming. Farming is something you want to learn in the field, and so I went on an apprenticeship and continued. I started going to conferences, visiting farms. I studied under some amazing mentors. I ended up on a biodynamic farm, and I worked with a biodynamic farmer, and I learned that's where the turkey sandwich actually was really happening, right? The feed for the animals was grown there, the animals were raised, the produce was grown, we had a small dairy, and the whole kind of closed-loop farm organism was being supported in this biodynamic farming. And I really became passionate about biodynamic agriculture and community-supported farming. Does everybody here know what community-supported agriculture is? Is anyone who doesn't know what CSA is in here? Don't be embarrassed. So a few people. Essentially, it's a great model where a community supports a farm by directly investing in the farm each season. So the consumers are taking the risk with the farmer, that their investment before the season starts is their seed capital. And then they invest in their compost and their seeds and their labor, and they grow food and give those shares, those dividends back in a weekly share of the harvest. And it kind of takes out the middleman, it strengthens that connection between the farmer and the consumer, and builds a really rich connection there. So I got into community-supported agriculture farming. I ended up, after internships and apprenticeships, I bought a farm when I was 20 in southwest Wisconsin, a beautiful 173-acre farm. And it was there, really, that I learned my greatest lessons. It was like my master's degree, in a sense. And I started to want to connect more people to those turkey sandwich moments. So I started growing food, which was not easy. I wish I had more time to share with you some of the challenges of fires and floods and flooded basements and being broke and trying to figure out how to make a living farming, working 18-hour days, making no money. But it was the best years of my life. And it was connecting people bringing the food to the people through farmers markets in Madison. I did the Dane County Farmers Market. I had a little food truck that I had a little pizza business to keep revenue going through the long winters, and I ended up buying a little food truck. I had a farm-to-table food truck like 20 years too early, but it was an awesome experience. And then I had a CSA, and through the CSA, I learned something really important, and it was that people having a relationship with direct consumers, it was when they came to the farm that they truly became connected and loyal customers. The customers are like, oh, there's too many turnips this week, not enough tomatoes. Those customers didn't exist when they came to the farm, and they understood what really goes into the hard work of farming and getting their hands in the soil and seeing, a long row of weeds and what it takes to take, and understanding it. And people don't have a real connection to agriculture anymore, right? So many people who live in the cities don't really, they want to, they're looking for opportunities to, but they really don't understand it. And I think it's so important to give people that opportunity to learn and connect to farming. So I kind of, as much as I loved growing food and driving so the other big thing is to afford a farm, I went 2 hours west of Madison. So I left my friends who were in college and my community. I bought this farm. I was pretty isolated. I was driving 2 hours at 3 in the morning to get to the market, to get in line, to get a good spot. It was exhausting. And I realized that I had this epiphany that I had it all wrong. It wasn't really about bringing food to the people. It was about bringing the farm to the people, right? I wanted people to have that experience more than just buying the food. And so I started to think, well, how could I do that? Could I build a community around the farm? Could I sell some of the land and build some houses and bring people in? And then they could, rather than sell an egg for 10 cents, have them go pick the egg themselves for $1, or I don't know. How do you sell the experience and build community around food? And that became something that, at that point, I started to think about really what today we call an agrihood. Back then, we weren't talking about it. And so I decided to sell the farm. And I ended up getting recruited to run a farm in a youth prison outside of San Francisco, work for a nonprofit. And it was there that I got inspired by the founder, the director, who's a landscape architect, to go back to school for landscape architecture and really hone my skills to not just farm, but to design farms into society. Designing farms into communities, into summer camps, into schools, into corporate campuses, into people's homes, gardens. And so I decided to go back to school for landscape architecture. And about a year in, I was at the University of Georgia. I was running a farm for a professor. I was a full-time landscape architecture student, and I got this fellowship grant that I had applied for to build farms in summer camps all over the country. And so I couldn't do it all. So I found myself meeting with the dean. This was the second time I sat down with the dean, the first time I pulled out of school to go farm. And this time I sat down and said, I don't want to drop out of school. I love landscape architecture, but I got all these opportunities. What should I do? And he said, Farmer D, which, by the way, I forgot to tell you the story how I became Farmer D, which is essentially when I went home from college freshman year, before I decided to pull out of school, I was having this debate with my family, like, D, what are you doing? You're going farming? 25 years ago, I was crazy. And my mom said, okay, Farmer D, we'll see where this goes. And that's how I became Farmer D. So you can credit my mom for that one. And so So here I am, sitting down with the dean, University of Georgia landscape architecture student, and he says to me, you know, Farmer D, I think you should pull out of school. You have a great opportunity. People come to school to create opportunities. I think you should pursue this. Come back if you want. By the way, and he clears his desk, you should go check out this project called Serenbe, just south of Atlanta. They need you. They're trying to do a farm community. And I thought, wow, okay, that's kind of what I've been dreaming about for years. So long story short, I ended up at Serenbe, and I started the farm there, and this was in 2001. And here was the solution to what I discovered was such a big problem, right? For me to go in debt buying my own farm 2 hours away from where people are was not a good solution. But here I could start a farm funded by the developer, have a salary, a lot less risk, and there was a community right there that I could engage with that could really get connected to the farm. And this really proved to me that this is a great model. And after 3 years of it becoming a very successful farm and community, developers started to approach me and say, hey, can you help me set up a farm in my community? And that's how I started to do Farmer D consulting and helping to design and build farms in communities all over the country, which is largely what I've been doing for the last 18 years. And I'm really proud to actually be able to share with all of you today, hot off the press, a new report that I helped author and publish with the Urban Land Institute on agrihoods and cultivating best practices in agrihoods. And I'm going to be giving a talk at 2 o'clock today to get a little bit more into details if you want to come. The workshop's called Planning the American Landscape in partnership with Design Workshop. And there's actually, the reason I'm here in large part is I've been working with People's Company on, I think, the first agrihood in Iowa, just 20 minutes outside of where we are now in Cumming. And it's a really, to think that this is coming to America's farm, the heart of farmland in this country is really exciting, right? So these are, you can see on this report, I have some copies I can give out, as I'm also going to sign my book a little after this in our booth, and also in the workshop. You can download it also for free online. The report is on uli.org/food. I'm happy to share that with all of you. And there's a map on there, an interactive map of all the agrihoods that we know of in the country. And it's growing really fast. And so part of my hope is that we can help create, the opportunity here is that agricultural land, where ag land keeps getting pushed further and further away from where people live, from cities. And if we can figure out a way to allow for development to happen, but also preserve agriculture and have them connected so that they're actually more in symbiosis rather than in conflict, we have a really beautiful solution to creating healthy, vibrant communities where people can be connected to their food, to each other, to the land, and at the same time create really successful neighborhoods where people can live healthy lives and agriculture can continue to be preserved, and even more importantly, people can then have this needed connection and relationship to their food and where it comes from. So it's been really fun working on projects across the country, helping to create these kinds of models. And so this is how agrihoods are defined by the Urban Land Institute there's over 200 across the country, and it's a single family or multifamily or mixed-use community built with a working farm as a focus. And in my workshop, I'll talk a little bit more about the different types of agrihoods. So there's a lot more to unpack here, and the report is a great resource as well to share. So I want to close with a couple of statistics to share with you that are out of the report. One is the interest in local food and organic farming, as many of you probably know, is growing tremendously. It's now, the organic food sales are about $47 billion in 2016, which was up 8.4% from the previous year, where generally the food market goes up about 0.5% a year. The number of farmers markets in this country grew from over 395% between 94 and 2017. Food hubs have grown over 700% in the last 15 years. So there's a lot of interest and growth in this area. And I think there's an awesome opportunity in speaking to an audience like you, who are people connected to the land, invested in the land, to look at this as an interesting opportunity to explore how to take and steward land and add value to it and create community at the same time. And what we found in the studies is that similar to communities built around open space and parks, the value of that land goes up like 15 to 30%. So it's having a working farm in a community not only provides that kind of value, but also nourishes the community in so many other ways, which I'll talk more about later. So thank you so much. I want to close by saying that, for all of you who work with the land and want to build community and preserve agriculture, this is something that you can do that's good for the community, good for the land, good for the people's health, and good for the economy. And so in some shape or form, we're all citizen farmers, whether we buy from local farms, grow our own food, or are building agrarian communities. So together, I hope we can inspire, connect, and nourish people to live healthier, happier lives. Thank you so much. I really appreciate the opportunity, and I'm really excited to hear Martha Stewart and see her turkey sandwich farm. Thank you. Have a great expo.